92Q, the best mix of R&B in the studio this morning. He doesn't need an introduction, but we're going to give him one anyway. You know who he is. Go and break it down for him, sissy.
Mayor David Briley.
David Briley.
There you go. Yeah. That's it. That's all we need to say. How you doing, sir?
All right. I'm doing well. That's a good reception. I got.
He doesn't need a lot of introduction.
Thank you for being here.
I went to a Republican lunch yesterday, and I got booed there. So this is a better.
How do you
reception.
take that type of stuff? How do you react to it?
Well, it was almost funny, to be honest with you. We were talking about immigration, and it was maybe only 20 or 30 people in the room, and I said something not favorable about something, and they started chanting "Build the Wall." And
my God!
While you were talking,
while I was talking,
build that wall,
to get me to be quiet. I think so.
That's crazy.
With the state passed some immigration law this last time that really limits what cities can do to help immigrants in Nashville, and so I
guess taking away that safe haven bubble we got around the city.
So I said we're going to comply with the law. That's what we have to do, but it's not a good law for the city of Nashville, and that's when they started chanting "Build the Wall." So,
wow. In the studio this morning, David Briley, lots happening with our city, and it's just and I actually opened up the phone lines, open up the Facebook so that the people can kind of guide me. What kind of questions do you want us to ask them? So, we're gonna just do those. So, Sissy, let's get one.
First question regarding the Airbnb: why does the city make it so hard for residents of the IT city to take advantage of the product? If you're a homeowner and want to make extra income off your property, you should be able to do so. What are your thoughts on this?
So it has been pretty controversial. So a couple of years ago, I guess in 2014, we first started regulating the short-term rentals. Mm-hmm. And what we had was thousands of them pop up. And seriously. And it was contributing to gentrification in some parts of town where people were coming in, kicking out long-term renters, and
setting up
jacking
houses.
up the rates. And so that was one of the reasons we started regulating it. We wanted to make sure that folks weren't pushed out of their places they've been living for a long time by somebody coming in on a bachelorette party. You can still do it. It is more difficult to do, but there's still ways to do it. So if you live in your home and want to rent it out over the weekend or something, you can still do that with Airbnb. It's the ones where all it is an Airbnb that it's much more difficult to do. Those are pretty limited right now. And one of the big reasons we limited it was because of the impact it was having on the long-term rentals and pushing people out of neighborhoods like Germantown and East Nashville and places where people had lived for a long time.
So it's more specifically directed to Airbnb specifically being built for that purpose.
That's right.
Okay.
Right.
So what would you say to someone that thinks that it's some kind of protection for big hotel businesses and things like that here in the town? Because that's what people think. Well, they don't want to let me get any of the money, and they want to send everybody down to the $500 hotels downtown on 8th Avenue.
Well, the hotels weren't really the ones pushing for the regulation. It was neighborhood groups and affordable housing advocates who pushed for the regulation. So what we did see over in Germantown in particular, where we had a lot of long-term rentals, people would come in and buy a house and fix it up and start renting it for $500 a night. And so that pushed a lot of people out of those neighborhoods. Additionally, some of them turned into party houses. And so you'd be living with your 3-year-old in a house, and right next door you would have a party going on all night, and maybe people in the backyard late. Maybe
no clothes on.
I wasn't going to say that.
What you said? What you said?
What he said. What he said.
All right, guys. Hey, stick around. We got more with the mayor here in the studio today. We got lots more questions. It's the Kenny Swill Morning Show. All right, guys. We're back here in the studio with our mayor, Nashville Mayor David Briley's in the studio. So lots of questions about being able to afford to live in Nashville. You were talking about long-term residents and people like that. What about, like, people that are saying this town is just too much for me to live in? I can't work here and live here. What are some solutions? Are you guys cooking up something?
Sure. So it's two parts, right? One is people need to make more money.
Yeah,
and that's a significant part of it. If you anything's affordable if you're making enough money. So we're trying to work on that as much as the other part about housing affordability. So with on the making money side, we've started this program called the Equal Business Opportunity Program, where we're trying to make level the playing field for women and minority-owned businesses doing business with the city. Because we looked back and we saw that Nashville had not been doing the best. Other cities around the country were doing better. And we were, I guess we'd say, passively discriminating against minority-owned businesses in Nashville.
Wow.
So we have started a new program. It rolls out on the 5th of July. It gets fully going. It'll help with capacity building. It'll make sure that we do a lot of contracting. So we're going to make sure it's fair to everybody in town.
How does a person get the information so that they can participate in this?
So if you just Google Nashville government procurement, I'm sure the webpage will pop up there, and you can go there, or you can reach out to my office and talk to Ashford Hughes, who's the city's chief diversity inclusion officer. And so we've got a great team in the mayor's office. My senior staff is about almost half female, and about a third African American, and 20% LGBT. So we've got a very good senior staff that's trying to make sure everybody gets a chance to play in Nashville.
What about raises for like city employees? I mean, I know we're talking about about teachers and want to put them in that too. Yeah. Teachers and garbage people and bus drivers and fire people, firemen, police officers. You know, I know that like the firemen get an attitude. They feel like they're being left out of this conversation.
And so last year was a pretty tight budget, just a series of decisions that were made before I got to be mayor. This year we were able to do a good budget that got a 3% across the board cost of living adjustment. Plus, most of our employees will get a step as well. So what we're looking at is maybe 70-80% of our employees will get somewhere around 5.5% or 6% raise this year. It's not enough. We still got more to do, and there's more to do with teachers in particular because the state's not really helping us. Traditionally, the state was a big funding source for public ed, but that has really dropped off. And so this year we're only getting maybe $500,000 in new money from the state. City's sending about $30 million, and the state's giving us $500,000. So it's hard with public ed because the state's really sort of changed the way they fund public ed. Now, the flip side to raising wages and working on that is working on the cost of housing. And so Nashville has 6 housing developments. We have Casey, Edge Hill, Napier Sudicum, Andrew Jackson, Cumberland View, and Cheatham Place. And so over the last 80 years, the city's built a fair amount of housing there, but it has always been concentrated poverty, really. I mean, and although a lot of folks have done well and been successful after they started in one of those developments, not enough. One of the things we know is that if they become more mixed income, it's easier for folks who live there to sort of break out and be more prosperous. So in the next 10 years, we're going to spend $350 million of local money to go into each one of those developments, add more units, make them mixed income, make them a better place to live for folks who live there. And they're all in areas of town that are seeing a lot of gentrification right now, every single one of them. And so what we know is that if we add thousands of units into those developments over the next decades, folks won't get forced out of Nashville. They'll have more opportunities to live here in places that they can afford. So we'll be announcing something here in the next couple of weeks for 2 new projects that'll go underway there. And if you want to go see what it looks like and it's great housing, go over to Casey right now because a lot is taking place in Casey already, where we've got I think 3 projects that are already either underway or already built over there. Nice places for folks to live. And going to be mixed income, change the outcomes for folks who live over there.
Okay. Another question from one of our listeners. What happened to the money that the city made during the NFL draft? And why can $30 million be set aside for parking meters and a new soccer stadium, but not finding the increases for teachers and other Metro employees?
Sure. So I'll try and take each one of
those.
Take time.
There's a lot
Let's start with draft.
The draft.
Okay. Start with draft. So the draft will increase our total revenues this year. I think they're estimating somewhere around $10 million in new revenues coming to the city. Some of that will go to pay for the convention center, and then the rest will flow into the city's coffers to go for things like teachers' raises and things like that. We won't have that money till next year, really. That's when we'll see what the increase sort of plays out in next year's budget. The parking money is actually money that's coming to us. So we have a plan to contract with a private sector company, and to improve our parking, to get caught up with other cities around the country, to do it smarter with technology. And then over the next 30 years, we would have about $300 million coming into the city. The upfront would be about $30 million next year.
I thought they scrapped it.
Well, we were having a hard time communicating with people in the context of the election, so it'll be in the next term where we come back and talk to people about what that truly
So
means.
for right now, it's just on it's on the table. It's on hold.
It's on hold.
And so
I mean, I think you look around Nashville and you see that we got all these cranes up. We're growing like crazy. Why can't we take care of our employees? That's the right question, perfect question. And it all goes back to the 2017 budget, 2018, where some mistakes were made in that budgeting process that resulted in a decrease in revenue. We lowered people's tax rate on their property lower than it needed to go. And so as a result, we had less revenue.
And then we didn't
coming
put
in.
something on the other side to balance the ledger.
That's right.
Wow.
Well, what we did, I mean, we took away people's pay raises. And so that's how we balanced it out.
Could there have been something else that you could have done besides the pay raises?
Not really.
Really?
I mean, our that was really the only place we could go without laying people off. I guess we could have laid people off. That would have been worse than that. So, but this year we got $100 million in new revenue.
Okay.
And that without raising tax rates, and that $100 million is going to let us go and do more to fund pay raises and get more money to schools and take care of folks who live in Nashville. So next year should be good as well, and we'll just cross that bridge when we come to it next year. But it was people had a right to worry about what was going on. But last August we went to the market and sold bonds for long-term projects. And the bond rating agencies, Moody's and S&P, gave us a really high rating. They're not worried about the finances of the city.
So how do you guys compensate? Because I know the budget was earmarked for $30 million for the parking, and then you take that out. How do you make up the $30 million space?
Sure. We expect that during the course of next year that we'll go ahead and get parking approved, and that once folks have a chance to really understand what it means, it'll be okay. But that's a relatively small percentage of our overall finances, and so we have some room to maneuver. We'll likely see revenue up in another area and expenses down in some areas, so we can accommodate that amount during the course of the year.
So even if you didn't get it approved before the year's out, you've got enough headroom.
And so a good example of that is that in the budget before this one, last year this time, we passed a budget that had $15 million in revenue for parking in it because we thought it would have happened last year. But it didn't, and so we were able to move some things around during the course of the year to accommodate that $15 million shortfall in terms of revenue. So we have it'll be work. I mean, I don't want to say it's just I snap my fingers and it happens. We'll have to work at it.
$30 million is a lot of money.
That is money. That is real money. So but it's the kind of number that we can navigate through in the course of the next year if we need to.
So is the convention center a self-contained? Does it make its own gravy?
Sure.
To stay operational? Because I mean, sometimes some people look at it like it's this albatross of an operation.
Well, what happened was when it was approved by the city back a few years ago, we created an agreement with the state that allows us to capture some of the state taxes that would normally go to the state to pay for the convention center.
Okay.
And as it turns out, it's far more than we need to pay for the convention center. Some state and a little bit of local gets trapped down there to pay for the convention center. It's more than we need. But it has to stay with them by state law. We can't then just turn around and spend it on anything. It can only be spent on tourist-related measures. Okay. And so they've accumulated a surplus.
And some of that's from the draft, right?
Some of that's from the draft. And so they've accumulated a surplus that's over $100 million. Wow. And now they have some good ideas about what they can do to continue to boost tourism because a lot of folks work in that area, and it does generate money for the city. But we can't, it'd be great, frankly, if we could just go and use that money for teachers. I would love to do that.
Right.
But we legally cannot do that. It's not just a state law. It's not just a local law, but it's also the contract between the city and the people who loaned us the money to build it. They have the right to say, no, you can't spend that money on anything other than tourism.
But could they say, yes, you can?
They could, but that would
But
be
that's
like
not
finding
likely.
getting every owner of a share of AT&T to agree to something.
Gotcha.
So I mean,
Okay.
it's just not something in the cards. I mean, they could, I guess, technically, but you'd have
Right.
to get hundreds and thousands of people
People
to
to agree to do
something.
one thing.
It'd be as hard as getting the Metro Council to agree to something.
Oh,
No shade, no shade, no shade.
so we were talking about we mentioned we did the Airbnb thing, so we kind of got that off the table. So for a person that's like, I don't like Mayor Briley, he ain't doing nothing up there, and they got this attitude about you because I mean, on my page there's some people with not so pleasant things to say about Mayor Briley. What's something you can say to turn that around?
It's just you've been talking to my wife.
Oh, no shade.
Is
He
that
went
right?
it today.
He went there. He went there.
Jokes. So how do you? I mean, of course, it's not like
Sure.
you're not trying to spend your time
Sure.
convincing somebody to like you or not like you. But what would you say about what you have done as mayor
Sure.
to convince them that you should give me your vote now?
Sure. So it's been an interesting year, right? I became mayor under unusual
Under duress.
Yes, you did.
yeah, so I was voluntold that I would be mayor, and so we have done a lot in the last year under difficult circumstances. We've started this equal business opportunity program that was important to the city. We started a program called Nashville Grad to help more of our local students get through Nashville State Community College because that first degree can earn you 30%, 40% more in your lifetime. We've hired a staff that, for the first time in the mayor's office, I think the senior staff truly reflects what folks in Nashville look like and what their priorities are. We've gotten more money to schools and teachers and to our employees this year, even though we've had a really hard budget. And even though the state is really not helping us do that, the draft came here. And one of the things about the draft I didn't mention was, Nashville has a reputation for being this country music place, right?
Right.
And I think the draft really gave us somewhat of a different image,
Oh,
both nationally
sure,
and
for sure.
internationally. And the music wasn't just country, and you got to see what Nashville truly is like. And it's not just about country music. And
Right.
so I think the draft was a good thing for Nashville.
It was.
We've recruited 6,600 high-paying jobs to come to Nashville. 60 from Amazon and EY and Alliance Bernstein, all coming here to Nashville to help folks make a really good living in the years to come. Those are companies that I think you see the national companies being even more aggressive in hiring when it comes to diversity than the typical companies that may have been here in Nashville for a long time. So I think people are going to look back on all that and say it's a great thing. And so we have done a lot in the last year. Now, people are impatient. They have a right to be impatient. We've had 40 years in our country where wages haven't kept up with inflation, and people have a right to say, hey, enough. And I'm never going to get on anybody for pushing a little bit harder and wanting more to be done more quickly. So I know people want more, and I'm working hard to get us more. We need a new president. I say that pretty clearly and without any
Absolutely.
qualification. He's bad for us. He divides us, and that bleeds over into Nashville. I mean, I see a little bit too much of people trying to divide us, and I'm trying to make sure that Nashville, as we move forward, everybody gets a chance to participate. Everybody has a road to prosperity. Everybody is going to meet their fullest potential, and when it comes to affordable housing and to public ed and to transportation and transit, we got a lot more to do, but we've been working hard on it.
On the you mentioned something about I guess some developers or what have you. Some people seem to think that the city is being a little too friendly and chumming up with these developers, which is sort of forcing the hands about
Sure.
real estate and who gets what, and it's turning into a have versus the have-not. So, do you think that we're giving the developers too much at this point?
Well, I've filed 2 budgets with the city and with the city council, and neither one of those had one penny for any incentive that I had brought to the city or asked for approval. Not one penny. And during my term as mayor, we have not done one tax increment financing deal. Not one. Now, I've asked for some money for Amazon and for Alliance Bernstein, and that money will have to be paid in the future. But so far, I have not asked the city for one penny for anything that I have approved, because I think we got to be prudent about it. We got to be thoughtful. We got to make sure. Now, and I'm going to do that, but in our city, in our country, as we have grown in the past, not everybody has had a chance to benefit from it. And if our city decides today we're going to stop growing, we're going to stop building, we're going to stop helping people build, that's going to give me fewer opportunities to help folks who never got a chance before.
Okay.
And so I'll give you one concrete example of that. I got a lot of grief for proceeding with the soccer arrangement, which I didn't negotiate. The council had voted on it and approved it before I got here,
Right.
but it had to get one more vote. And so I felt it was the right thing to do because we'd already sort of told the world we were going to do it. But it was also the right thing to do because I got to stand in a room and do the final negotiations with a minority-owned contractor from Nashville. And so when that deal got done, it wasn't about just the same old people who've always benefited getting the same benefit they always got. It was an opportunity for the leadership, the mayor of Nashville, to make sure somebody who maybe hadn't gotten enough before, hadn't had a fair shake, hadn't had a level playing field, that they were there at the table getting the benefit of a big project taking place in Nashville.
That's what I'm talking
All right,
about.
ladies and gentlemen, Mayor David Briley here in the studio, man, and we've just been talking it up so much. I appreciate you taking some time and
I have a quick
talking to the
question.
people. And you go ahead, question.
Do you see the NFL draft coming back to Nashville?
I think it will come back to Nashville. I think they weren't the easiest to work with, I will tell you.
Really?
They are pretty
Yeah,
demanding.
they are.
They're pretty
They are
demanding. And
hard
so,
to deal with.
But I think they saw Nashville as being a great place. It's a pretty amazing view to have of Lower Broad there and the stadium
yeah.
behind. It was a lot of work for the city, and there were some impositions on the city. Next time, I think we'll know a little bit better about how to pull it off so it's not as big an imposition, but still as good an event. I think they'll be back. I think we'll try and bring them back in a few years.
Did you have any final words you want to give to the audience before you?
Sure. The election is August 1st.
August 1st.
Yes.
Early voting starts July 12th.
It sure does.
Still got time to register to vote. Your vote matters, not just in my election, but when you vote for council members. And we have a great opportunity in Nashville to move forward together. Give more people a chance to prosper, be successful, and that's what I'm committed to making sure we do.
Ladies and gentlemen, Mayor David Briley, thank you for stopping by. I
Thank
appreciate
you
it.
so much.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.